The story of America's death row is one that stirs emotions unlike almost any other. Behind the cold statistics and legal jargon, there are faces, men and women who, for better or worse, have become symbols of the U.S. justice system. In 2026, as the country faces a new wave of scheduled executions, the attention is turning once again to the individuals on death row. These are not just numbers. They are human beings with histories, families, and stories that can't be ignored. And today, we'll take a deep dive into who they are, how they ended up on death row, and why their cases have become some of the most controversial in recent memory. If you're fascinated by true crime and want to stay on top of every development, make sure you hit that subscribe button now and tap the bell so you don't miss any updates. The first thing to understand about death row in the United States is its diversity. While popular culture sometimes paints a single, monolithic picture, the reality is far more complex. Death row houses people from every walk of life, across different races, ages, and backgrounds. Some arrive there after a lifetime of hardship and marginalization, while others came from relatively stable homes but made irreversible decisions that changed their lives forever. Each face carries a story, and each story highlights a facet of America's criminal justice system that is often overlooked. Take, for example, one of the inmates scheduled for execution in 2026, a man in his late 50s who spent over 30 years behind bars. His crime, while serious, has sparked debates about the fairness of sentencing, the influence of race in jury decisions, and the availability of quality legal representation at trial. Supporters of his execution argue that justice delayed is justice denied for the victims' families. Yet advocates for clemency emphasize his rehabilitation, his contributions to prison education programs, and the question of whether someone who has spent decades reflecting on their mistakes should still face the ultimate punishment. If you're already intrigued by these conflicting perspectives, hit the like button. It really helps this video reach others who care about the complexities of justice. Another individual on the 2026 list is a woman in her 40s whose case has drawn attention not just for the crime itself, but for her history of mental illness. Advocates argue that her mental state at the time of her offense should weigh heavily in sentencing considerations. The debate around mental health and capital punishment has been ongoing for decades, with legal experts often questioning whether the justice system adequately accounts for these factors. By highlighting these stories, we hope to challenge viewers to think critically. What does justice really mean, and who gets to decide it? Comment below what you think should happen in cases like hers. We read every comment and value your perspective. Then there is a younger man in his 30s whose execution has reignited conversations about innocence claims in America. Advances in forensic science, particularly DNA testing, have exonerated numerous individuals over the past 20 years, revealing that mistakes in the justice system can and do happen. His supporters insist that new evidence could potentially alter the outcome, while the courts maintain that the existing verdict and appeals process are sufficient. The tension between ensuring justice for victims and protecting the innocent is palpable, and it's one of the reasons death row continues to provoke such intense debate. If you want to see ongoing updates on cases like this, subscribe and make sure notifications are turned on. This story is still unfolding. We also must consider the families, both of the victims and of the inmates. Death row doesn't just impact those behind bars. Parents, siblings, children, and extended families all live with the consequences of these cases every day. Some families of inmates maintain contact, hoping for clemency or at least for their loved ones to die with dignity. Others have turned their backs, unable to reconcile the crimes committed with their personal values. Meanwhile, the victims' families grapple with a range of emotions: grief, anger, relief at seeing justice served, or even doubt that any punishment could ever compensate for their loss. Highlighting these human dimensions is critical for understanding why death row is not just a legal matter, but a deeply personal and societal one. Comment if you want us to do a follow-up episode focusing solely on the families affected. Your voice can guide what we cover next. It's also worth noting the psychological dimension of death row. Inmates face years, often decades, of waiting, a process that can profoundly affect mental health. The isolation, the uncertainty, the constant appeals and legal procedures all contribute to a psychological landscape that is both fascinating and sobering. Experts often study these cases to understand resilience, remorse, and human behavior under extreme conditions. By exploring these stories, we gain insights not only into the individuals themselves, but into broader questions about justice, morality, and human capacity for change. If you find these psychological insights compelling, make sure to like and share this video. Spreading knowledge can help others see the human side of these complex cases. Finally, as we look at the faces of death row in 2026, one thing becomes clear. These are stories that compel reflection. They challenge assumptions, spark conversations, and force viewers to confront questions that are uncomfortable but necessary. Each inmate represents a unique intersection of crime, law, and humanity. They remind us that behind every headline is a person, and behind every verdict is a set of circumstances that shaped that person's life. By watching this series, subscribing, and engaging in the discussion, you become part of a broader conversation about justice, accountability, and morality in America today. So as we wrap up Chapter 1, take a moment to reflect on the complexity of these lives. These are not just criminals or statistics. They are individuals whose stories reveal the strengths, weaknesses, and challenges of the U.S. justice system. Hit like if this chapter gave you new insights, comment on which case you want us to explore deeper, and share this video to keep the conversation going. And remember, this is only the beginning. Chapter 2 will dive into the decades-long waits, the emotional toll, and the untold struggles of life on death row, giving you a perspective that is rarely seen in mainstream coverage. Stay tuned, subscribe, and make sure your notifications are on. You won't want to miss what comes next. Life on death row is a test of endurance in ways most people can hardly imagine. It is not just a sentence. It is a daily reality where every moment is measured against a future that may or may not come. For the inmates scheduled for execution in 2026, the waiting has often lasted decades, and it has shaped them, their families, and the public perception of justice itself. This chapter takes you inside that waiting, exploring the psychological, emotional, and social dimensions of life in the world's most scrutinized prisons. If you are fascinated by these untold stories, hit the subscribe button now and make sure your notifications are on. You won't want to miss any of these episodes as we go deeper. The first thing to understand about the waiting on death row is its unpredictability. Inmates can spend years, sometimes decades, appealing their cases, challenging evidence, and petitioning for clemency. Each legal motion brings a wave of hope, often followed by disappointment, creating an emotional roller coaster that is difficult to comprehend from the outside. This prolonged uncertainty can exacerbate feelings of anxiety, depression, and isolation. Yet, remarkably, some inmates manage to find purpose, engaging in education, creative expression, or mentoring fellow prisoners. Their stories demonstrate resilience in the face of extreme adversity. If you're intrigued by the human spirit under pressure, smash that like button and share this video with friends who love thought-provoking true crime content. Consider one inmate, a man in his late 50s, who has been on death row for over 30 years. He arrived as a young man, convicted under circumstances that continue to be debated by legal scholars and advocacy groups. Over the decades, he has watched fellow inmates come and go, some executed, others exonerated, and some dying from natural causes. The passage of time on death row is unique because it is simultaneously static and dynamic. The environment rarely changes, yet each day brings new legal developments, media attention, or personal reflections. The psychological toll is immense. Imagine waking up each day knowing that your life could end, but you cannot predict when. It is a reality that most of us cannot even begin to fathom. If this level of insight into life on death row fascinates you, comment below. We want to hear what you think about the challenges inmates face while waiting for justice. The architecture and structure of death row itself add another layer to the experience. Prisons are designed to isolate, monitor, and control. Cells are small, often with minimal natural light, limited contact with others, and strict schedules. Daily life revolves around routines that can feel monotonous but are essential for maintaining some semblance of order in an otherwise uncertain environment. Meals, recreation time, legal consultations, and brief interactions with staff become the landmarks of each day. For some, these routines are a lifeline. For others, they are a reminder of what has been lost. By understanding this environment, we begin to see the full scope of the human cost of death row beyond the headlines. Don't forget to hit the bell icon. Our upcoming chapters will show you just how challenging these routines can become over decades. Another critical aspect of the waiting is the role of time in shaping perception. Decades in confinement can transform perspectives, beliefs, and priorities. Some inmates emerge with profound insights into life, justice, and morality. Others struggle with the cumulative weight of isolation, experiencing frustration, anger, or despair. Advocates for criminal justice reform often highlight these transformations to argue for alternative sentencing, especially for those who show genuine rehabilitation. In 2026, several inmates facing execution have become examples of both extremes. Individuals whose lives have been consumed by reflection and growth, and others whose cases remain a flashpoint of legal and moral debate. If you want to see these contrasting journeys explored in depth, subscribe and stay tuned. Future chapters will delve even further. Families play a central role in the experience of waiting on death row. Some remain steadfast supporters, visiting regularly, writing letters, and providing emotional sustenance. Others drift away over time, unable to reconcile the crime with their own values or the pain they feel. The relationships between inmates and their families are complex, influenced by love, guilt, hope, and loss. For the families of victims, waiting for justice can be just as agonizing, often creating a parallel narrative of anticipation and heartbreak. These intertwined experiences demonstrate that death row is not just about punishment. It is about human connection, empathy, and the ripple effects of crime and consequence. If you find these human stories compelling, like and share this video to help raise awareness of the emotional landscapes involved in death row cases. Education and rehabilitation programs are another lifeline for inmates. Many death row prisoners use their time to pursue studies, earn degrees, or mentor other prisoners. These programs provide structure, mental stimulation, and a sense of purpose. They also raise challenging questions for society. If someone demonstrates growth, understanding, and a commitment to change, should the passage of time alter the outcome of their sentence? These questions lie at the heart of some of the most controversial executions scheduled in 2026. If you're interested in the rehabilitation side of death row, comment education on death row below. We might dedicate a full video to this topic. One cannot ignore the ethical questions surrounding decades-long waits on death row. Critics argue that such extended periods amount to cruel and unusual punishment, especially when mental health and human dignity are at stake. Others counter that the thoroughness of the legal process is necessary to ensure fairness and prevent wrongful executions. The 2026 cohort of death row inmates embodies these debates, representing both the benefits and challenges of a system designed to be deliberate, cautious, and final. By exploring these tensions, viewers are invited to question not just the fate of individual inmates, but the principles and values that underpin the entire justice system. Like and share if you believe conversations about ethics and justice are essential for society. Finally, as we conclude this chapter on waiting, it becomes clear that life on death row is a unique human experience, one defined by time, uncertainty, resilience, and reflection. The faces of the inmates scheduled for execution in 2026 carry decades of history, struggle, and adaptation. Their stories are a reminder that justice is more than a verdict. It is a lived experience that touches everyone involved: the convicted, the victims, the families, the legal teams, and society at large. Engaging with these stories through this series, subscribing, commenting, and sharing helps ensure that these narratives are seen, heard, and reflected upon. So as we look forward, remember that this chapter is only one part of a larger story. Next, we will explore the controversies surrounding these executions, from legal debates to questions about fairness, mental health considerations, and public opinion. Hit like if you're ready for the next chapter, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next installment of this deep dive into America's death row. Stay tuned. The story is far from over, and the lessons it holds are both profound and unforgettable. Death row is never just about punishment. It's also a flashpoint for controversy, debate, and questions about fairness in the justice system. The inmates scheduled for execution in 2026 are at the center of discussions that touch on legal processes, mental health, race, socioeconomic factors, and even international perceptions. In this chapter, we dive into these controversies, exploring the complexities that make each case far more than a simple matter of guilt or innocence. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to follow every update. These stories evolve constantly, and you won't want to miss a single development. One of the most pressing controversies surrounding death row involves the role of mental health in sentencing. Many inmates facing execution in 2026 have histories of mental illness, some of which were present long before the crimes they committed. Legal scholars and advocates argue that mental health conditions can impair judgment, reduce impulse control, or limit understanding of consequences. Yet, despite decades of debate, the U.S. Supreme Court has maintained that execution of mentally ill individuals is constitutionally permissible in certain circumstances, as long as the individual meets a specific legal threshold of competence. These cases raise profound ethical questions. If someone's capacity for decision-making was compromised, should society still impose the ultimate punishment? If you find this debate compelling, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. We read and highlight viewer insights in upcoming videos. Race and socioeconomic status are also at the center of controversy. Studies consistently show that defendants of color, particularly Black and Latino individuals, are disproportionately represented on death row compared to their percentage of the population. Similarly, those from lower-income backgrounds often face greater challenges in accessing effective legal representation, increasing the likelihood of harsher sentences. Among the 2026 cohort, several inmates' cases have been scrutinized for these disparities, prompting advocates to call for review and reform. Highlighting these stories is essential not only to understand individual cases, but also to explore the broader patterns of inequality in the justice system. If you want us to explore the influence of race and wealth on death row cases in a future video, smash that like button and comment justice for all. In addition to systemic factors, some controversies stem from the evidence itself. Advances in forensic science, such as DNA testing and digital analysis, have revealed errors in past convictions, creating doubt in cases previously considered airtight. Several inmates scheduled for execution in 2026 have had appeals based on claims of new evidence or misinterpretation of data. These situations spark public debate. Should a case be reconsidered when new evidence emerges, even decades after the original verdict? This tension between finality and accuracy is one of the reasons death row remains so contentious. For viewers who want deeper dives into forensic controversies, subscribe now. You'll get access to each episode as it breaks down these complicated stories. Another area of controversy is the debate over execution methods. While this chapter will not describe any violent procedures, it is important to note that public and legal scrutiny has grown over whether certain execution methods meet standards of humaneness. Inmates, legal teams, and advocacy groups have challenged states on ethical grounds, prompting debates about whether executions should continue under existing protocols. These legal challenges are highly publicized, contributing to the intense scrutiny surrounding the 2026 executions. By understanding these discussions, viewers gain insight into the complexities of balancing law, ethics, and public expectation in a high-stakes system. Hit the bell to follow this series, because we'll continue tracking legal developments in real time. Claims of innocence further fuel controversy. Over the years, a significant number of death row inmates have been exonerated, often through new evidence, legal advocacy, or investigative journalism. Among the 2026 inmates, at least one case has been highlighted by advocacy groups for potential wrongful conviction. Supporters argue that executing someone whose guilt is in doubt is a profound miscarriage of justice. On the other hand, prosecutors emphasize the legal process, including multiple appeals and trials, as sufficient to uphold the verdict. These conflicting perspectives keep the debate alive and highlight the tension between justice for victims and protection of the accused. If you have an opinion on wrongful convictions, comment below and share your thoughts. We often feature viewer perspectives in follow-up episodes. Legal representation is another flashpoint. The quality of defense attorneys, access to appeals, and even geographic differences can dramatically influence death row outcomes. Some inmates in 2026 had limited resources at the time of their trial, which advocacy groups argue may have contributed to harsher sentencing. Others benefited from highly experienced legal teams, but still faced execution due to the severity of their crimes. These disparities demonstrate the high stakes of legal access in capital cases, underscoring why controversies surrounding fairness and equality remain central to public discussion. If you're passionate about justice reform, like this video and share it. It helps us bring attention to these issues. As the world turns its eyes toward America in 2026, death row has become not only a domestic concern, but a global story. The faces of the inmates scheduled for execution are being scrutinized far beyond U.S. borders, raising questions about justice, morality, and human rights. International attention adds a layer of complexity to these cases, influencing public perception, media coverage, and sometimes even the legal process. Today, we explore how the world is watching, reacting, and responding to America's death row practices, and why these perspectives matter. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the bell now, because you'll want to follow every development in this global conversation. One of the most striking aspects of global scrutiny is the contrast between countries that have abolished the death penalty and the United States, which continues to carry out executions in some states. Nations in Europe, Canada, and parts of Latin America have long argued that capital punishment violates basic human rights and moral standards. For these countries, the execution of inmates in 2026 appears not only outdated but ethically troubling. International media coverage often highlights the human stories behind the statistics, putting pressure on policymakers, advocacy groups, and the courts. For viewers who want to understand these international perspectives, like this video and comment Global Viewpoint. We'll feature your insights in future episodes. International human rights organizations have been particularly vocal. Groups such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch monitor death row cases closely, documenting concerns about fairness, mental health, and potential wrongful convictions. In 2026, several inmates' cases have drawn their attention because of prolonged legal delays, questionable evidence, or mental health considerations. While these organizations cannot directly intervene in U.S. legal proceedings, their reports influence public perception and contribute to the global dialogue on justice. Sharing this video can help raise awareness of these perspectives and contribute to a wider discussion on human rights, so don't hesitate to spread it. The media plays a critical role in shaping international understanding of America's death row. News outlets in Europe, Asia, and Latin America often cover high-profile U.S. cases with a focus on ethical debates and human rights implications. These reports can affect international relations, tourism perceptions, and even foreign policy discussions. For the inmates themselves, this attention can be both a burden and a source of hope. Some may gain access to additional legal resources or advocacy support, while others face intense scrutiny that amplifies stress and uncertainty. Hit the like button if you want more episodes exploring the influence of media on death row cases. It's a topic that continues to evolve rapidly. International attention also highlights the stark differences in execution methods and legal safeguards. Many countries that have abolished the death penalty argue that the procedures used in U.S. executions, even when legally sanctioned, raise questions about humaneness and fairness. While this video will not describe execution procedures, It is important to note that global observers frequently critique the legal frameworks, appeal processes, and ethical oversight surrounding death row. These critiques force Americans to confront the ways in which their justice system compares to global standards, sparking debate and reflection both domestically and abroad. If you're intrigued by these comparisons, comment "Justice versus Global Standards" below. The 2026 cohort of death row inmates also illustrates how international advocacy can intersect with domestic law. In some cases, foreign diplomats, human rights lawyers, and advocacy organizations have petitioned U.S. courts or state governors for clemency, citing international legal norms or human rights principles. These interventions rarely determine the final outcome, but they highlight the broader ethical context in which executions take place. Viewers who follow international law and global justice issues will find these stories particularly compelling. Subscribe now to ensure you don't miss episodes that examine these intersections in depth. Public perception abroad often contrasts sharply with U.S. domestic opinion. In many countries, capital punishment is widely viewed as a violation of fundamental human rights, regardless of the crime committed. International audiences may focus more on ethical considerations, rehabilitation potential, and fairness than on punitive measures or deterrence. This perspective provides a lens through which Americans can re-examine the morality and effectiveness of death row policies. Sharing this video can help bring these international viewpoints into domestic conversations, fostering a more nuanced discussion. Global scrutiny also raises questions about the universality of justice. If the same standards applied abroad were enforced in the U.S., many of the 2026 executions might be reconsidered or delayed. These questions challenge Americans to consider whether their legal system aligns with global expectations of fairness, transparency, and ethical responsibility. By exploring these debates, we not only learn about other nations' approaches, but also gain insight into how Americans define justice for themselves. Hit that like button if you think global perspectives can improve domestic justice. Your engagement helps us bring these conversations to a wider audience. The families of inmates and victims are not immune to international attention either. Advocacy campaigns, media reports, and social media posts from abroad can influence the public narrative surrounding individual cases. For some families, this attention can provide support, hope, or validation. For others, it can intensify the emotional strain and make already difficult experiences more complex. Highlighting these perspectives reminds viewers that death row is a shared experience, touching lives across borders and cultures. Comment below if you'd like us to explore the impact of international attention on families in a future video. Legal scholars and ethicists often weigh in from abroad, analyzing U.S. cases to provide context, critique policies, and compare methods to international norms. In 2026, several inmates' cases have become subjects of academic research, commentary, and public debate outside the U.S. These discussions contribute to a broader understanding of justice, fairness, and ethical responsibility. They also offer American audiences a unique opportunity to view domestic issues through a comparative lens. If you find these global analyses intriguing, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll continue covering international insights on death row. Social media amplifies global reactions. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok allow international audiences to share opinions, campaign for clemency, and highlight human rights concerns. Hashtags, viral posts, and influencer commentary create a virtual global courtroom where public opinion can be heard around the world. For inmates, this digital attention adds another dimension to the waiting process, connecting them indirectly to audiences they may never meet, but who care deeply about their fate. Sharing this video can help international viewers engage with these cases and spark cross-border dialogue. As the world watches, one thing becomes clear: death row in America is not just a domestic issue. It is a lens through which the world examines U.S. values, ethics, and legal standards. The cases of 2026 show how interconnected global opinion and domestic justice have become. They remind us that the story of death row is about more than crime and punishment. It's about how society, both nationally and internationally, grapples with complex moral questions. If you want to see more global perspectives in the remaining chapters, like and comment "Global Justice" below so we know to continue this focus. Finally, as we conclude this chapter, it is evident that the eyes of the world are on America's death row. Each inmate scheduled for execution in 2026 represents a story that transcends borders, sparking discussion on justice, ethics, and human rights. By following this series, subscribing, sharing, and engaging with the content, you are participating in a global conversation about morality, law, and accountability. The next chapter, Chapter 5, will bring the countdown to life, exploring the final stages of death row, the pending executions, and the questions that remain unanswered, questions that challenge viewers to think deeply about justice and society. Hit that like button and bell icon. You won't want to miss the dramatic conclusion to this series. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through America's death row in 2026, the focus turns to the countdown, the final stages of the process for those scheduled for execution. This is a period that encapsulates decades of waiting, legal battles, public debate, and personal reflection. It is a time when the weight of the past, the uncertainty of the present, and the inevitability of the future converge. Understanding this phase gives viewers a profound insight into the complexity of justice, the human condition, and the moral dilemmas surrounding capital punishment. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Tap that button and ring the bell to stay updated on every chapter and future developments in these stories. For the inmates on death row, the countdown is not just about marking days on a calendar. It is a process marked by legal preparation, appeals, and psychological preparation. Many prisoners spend this time reviewing past events, reconnecting with family where possible, and attempting to find peace or purpose in a situation over which they have limited control. These final months and years are filled with emotional complexity, hope mingled with fear, reflection paired with anticipation. It is a stage that captures the essence of the human experience under extraordinary circumstances. If you are fascinated by these personal journeys, hit the like button and comment countdown stories so we can focus even more on the human side of death row. For some inmates, the countdown brings renewed legal efforts. Appeals based on new evidence, procedural errors, or mental health considerations are often filed in the final months before execution. Legal teams, advocacy groups, and even international organizations can become involved, presenting arguments that may delay or commute sentences. These efforts underscore the tension between finality and fairness in the justice system. For viewers, this highlights the critical role that law, advocacy, and public engagement play in determining the fates of those on death row. Subscribe now to follow real-time updates and gain insight into these high-stakes legal battles. The psychological toll of the countdown is profound. Inmates face intense stress, uncertainty, and the challenge of maintaining mental stability while the world watches. For many, this is a time of deep introspection where past actions, regrets, and personal philosophies come to the forefront. Some turn to faith, meditation, or creative pursuits as a way to navigate the emotional turbulence. Others struggle to reconcile the reality of their situation with the passage of time they have spent preparing for this moment. These experiences are a reminder that death row is not only a legal process, but a deeply human journey. Hit the like button if you want us to explore more psychological stories in future videos. Families, too, experience their own countdown. For the families of inmates, the final stages before execution are a mixture of hope, fear, and heartbreak. They often become the lifeline for the prisoners, providing emotional support and helping them navigate final preparations. For the families of victims, this period can bring a sense of closure or renewed grief, depending on their personal perspectives and beliefs about justice. The countdown is therefore not just a solitary experience. It reverberates through entire networks of relationships, affecting everyone connected to the case. Comment below if you want a special episode focused solely on the family's experiences during the countdown. Public attention reaches a peak during this stage. Media coverage intensifies, social campaigns gain momentum, and public opinion often polarizes. High-profile cases scheduled for execution in 2026 have become the center of national conversation, with debates about fairness, morality, and the death penalty dominating discussions. The countdown amplifies emotions and public engagement, reminding us that death row is as much a societal mirror as it is a legal reality. Sharing this video can help spread awareness of the complexities behind these stories, ensuring that discussions are informed and nuanced. Ethical questions loom large during the countdown. Should decades of reflection, rehabilitation, or demonstrated remorse influence the timing or outcome of executions? How does society weigh the pursuit of justice against the preservation of human dignity? These are questions that do not have easy answers, and they are at the heart of the debates surrounding the 2026 cohort. By exploring these issues, viewers are invited to think critically about the balance between punishment, morality, and the potential for human change. Hit the bell to be notified when we release follow-up episodes exploring these ethical dimensions in greater depth. In many cases, the countdown highlights the tension between certainty and uncertainty. Legal processes are designed to be thorough, ensuring that every appeal and motion is considered. Yet, even as execution dates are scheduled, new evidence, legal technicalities, or administrative delays can alter timelines. This unpredictability adds a layer of psychological complexity for inmates, families, and legal teams alike. Understanding this uncertainty provides viewers with a more nuanced perspective on what life, and the final months, on death row truly entail. Like and share this video if you find this insight into the human side of legal processes valuable. International perspectives also play a role in the countdown. Foreign governments, advocacy groups, and media outlets often monitor final stages closely, voicing concerns about human rights and fairness. In some instances, this global attention has led to legal interventions, public petitions, or diplomatic correspondence aimed at delaying or reviewing cases. For U.S. audiences, these interventions provide a unique lens through which to consider how domestic justice aligns with international ethical norms. Comment Global Countdown below if you want us to focus on these cross-border interactions in future content. The countdown is also a period of reflection and storytelling. Inmates often share their experiences through letters, interviews, or writings, documenting their journey, expressing remorse, or exploring personal philosophies. These narratives offer rare insight into the inner lives of individuals who have lived under the constant shadow of death for decades. For viewers, this storytelling humanizes a system often reduced to statistics, emphasizing that behind each legal case is a person navigating extraordinary circumstances. Subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you don't miss upcoming episodes where we explore these personal narratives in detail. Finally, as the countdown draws near, the broader societal questions come to the forefront. What does it mean to pursue justice? How do we weigh punishment against rehabilitation, deterrence, and morality? How should society respond when years of waiting, reflection, and transformation intersect with legal finality? The 2026 cohort challenges viewers to grapple with these questions, leaving us to reflect on our own values and beliefs about justice and humanity. Sharing this video can help spark thoughtful conversations about these issues in your community, encouraging dialogue that extends beyond the screen. As we close this series, it is clear that America's death row in 2026 represents a convergence of law, morality, human experience, and societal reflection. Each inmate, each family, and each case tells a story that is deeply personal yet profoundly public. By engaging with these narratives, subscribing to this channel, commenting, and sharing, viewers participate in a conversation that is both essential and ongoing. Like this video if this series has changed how you view death row, comment with your thoughts on justice and morality, and share it to continue the discussion. The countdown, while a final stage in the legal process, is not the end of the conversation. It is an invitation to consider justice in its broadest sense, to weigh ethical questions, and to reflect on the human experience in extreme circumstances. As the 2026 executions approach, these stories remain a powerful reminder that behind every headline are lives, families, and moral complexities that demand our attention. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with us as we continue exploring the stories, debates, and reflections that define America's most controversial executions.